GoLongTD.com, humanizing pro football journalism.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Go Long Podcast. I'm Tyler Dunn, GoLongTD.com. Make sure you subscribe. We've got a lot of season preview stories rolling out for you. But without further ado, I am so jacked to bring on one of my best friends in the biz, but more than that, one of the absolute best writers, thinkers that there is in pro football. Conor Orr, senior writer at Sports Illustrated, and also the co-host with Albert Breer of the Monday Morning Quarterback podcast, which is excellent. I just was listening to your episode with Albert, I think it was a few days ago, when you're breaking down the Marriott nights, and it was demoralizing. I had to go back and look at my app to see how much of my life has been spent in a hotel. And it wasn't Albert's level, but it was like 2.5 years. So it is kind of sobering when you see something like that, isn't it?
Albert this year at the Super Bowl will hit 6 years of his life. And I told the reason this came up was I checked, I don't know, probably a couple months ago when we were on vacation, because I was looking at my points balance and I was like, could we stay maybe we'll stay another night, whatever. And I was like, wow, like it's been a year, a year of my life. Mostly from, when I used to be a beat writer, right? It was guaranteed minimum 8 nights per year, because you go with 8 road games for the 16-game schedule. And then there was, the 5 nights for the combine, the week for the Super Bowl. And then that all just starts to compound and add up. The Jets and Giants never made the playoffs when I covered these teams. But, over time, you start to, spend a lot of time in Marriott beds,
Which, it does beat the Daily Orange days, at our student paper. We obviously went to college together, for those who don't know. Daily Orange University at Syracuse. Mm-hmm. And, man, those road trips, those legendary road trips with, one Matt Ehalt, one Jared Diamond, Andy McCullough. I mean, we were beat partners for basketball. Mm-hmm. Yes. But, man, it was – I look back at those days, and it's like, talking to your professor to say, hey, I'm gonna miss a class because we're driving, 7 hours to D.C. or taking a flight to Salt Lake City and just trying to do everything at once. But we didn't really know what a Marriott night quite was at that point.
I mean, the 3 of us stayed in like a youth hostel at the foot of a mountain in Salt Lake City. And the more that I think about it now, like, the more that I wonder, these things are booked for us by our business manager. And I'm like, how did he even find this place? Like,
who was amazing, by the way. Love Pete.
Oh, Pete was the best. And then San was the manager of the youth hostel. And I remember, like, we got there at like 1 o'clock in the morning. We had to like bang on the door for him to let us in.
That's right. San at the youth hostel in Salt Lake City for a little Syracuse Butler Sweet 16 action.
God. We slept there. We slept in Matt Ehalt's basement next to his cat. God rest his cat's soul. Ghostini, the fireball.
Ghostini, that's right.
I took a overnight train, so I slept when they played Notre Dame. Our business manager somehow found a train that went from Syracuse, New York to South Bend, Indiana, which, like, I didn't even know that existed, right? And so he's like, it's great. That way we'll save on the hotel because you won't have to. He's like, you'll sleep on the train. So the train left at midnight and then got to South Bend, Indiana at 8 o'clock in the morning. The Notre Dame-Syracuse game was at 7, and then it was over at 9, and then you had to do post-game, and you had to do reporting, and then the train left again at midnight to leave from South Bend to go back to Syracuse. So I remember, like, you're just on this train with a bunch of wackadoos, right? And you have, like, a very early cell phone, and you're dictating, like, a Syracuse basketball sidebar over the phone to someone at the desk on the train. Like, and we're in the middle of, like, Lake Winna-something, Indiana, and I'm like, yes, and Wes Johnson passed the ball inside to, oh, my God. Great travel stories.
Meanwhile, like you're the sports editor that semester, so you're at the office at 744 Ostrom until 3, 4, 5 a.m. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. Like those.
We did not sleep for 4 years.
Insane. But it does help. I tell you what, now that we both have children and we're balancing life and work and traveling, I feel like, especially this time of year, that delirium can really set in with the training camp travel. And, I mean, like last night, like in the middle of the night, the smoke alarm just went off. No idea why. We just got it, just put it in, thought it was good. And to wake up in an absolute panic, thinking that the house may be burning down, with the kids upstairs, it was total mayhem. And, that's 1:45 a.m. Then the kids are awake and then they're coming into bed with us because they're scared. So the Daily Orange and those cross-country trips in trains and staying at the youth hostel with San, it all prepared us for life in football. It all comes together.
It all comes together.
But it was great seeing you out there. New York Giants training camp. Saw Conor there at the sideline, taking it all in. And we'll have a lot of New York Giants stuff here at Go Long. You've got some Giants stuff up at SI.com. Great column on Brian Dable leaning into those 11-on-11 sessions and ditching 7-on-7, which just grabbed some wings with my other podcaster, Jim Onis, last night. And he said how 7-on-7 has never been real football. It's just check down city. So smart move by Dable and the Giants. But you were also at those practices that kind of went viral. Fisticuffs with the Detroit Lions. You get a Dayball team in there with a Dan Campbell team. There will be blood. There will be blood. And you have it on your X account, but there were fights at 11:21, 11:22, 11:24, and 11:34 with click, click, boom by Saliva playing along the way.
Yeah.
It must have been quite a sight.
But this is how I knew it was on purpose, right? Like, first of all, when Dable and I were talking before practice, and he had mentioned that he wasn't going to let Daniel Jones do 7-on-7s for most training camp. And the impetus behind that was like, he's saying like, okay, Evan Neal is out. John Michael Schmitz is out. So my starting right tackle's out. My center's out. My quarterback situation is what it is, right? And so, it sucks theoretically, but you run head into that, right? And so, okay, let's make it suck. Every one of Daniel Jones's throws, I want Dexter Lawrence in his face because that's what the regular season is going to be like. And then when the first series of Giants-Lions fights happen on the Monday practice, we were talking to him on Tuesday before the practice, and, everyone was like, well, Brian, what about all these fights? And he's just like, yeah, we got to get it cleaned up. But, like, you could tell he wants the contact. Yeah. He wants the fighting. He wants, exactly what happened. Like, I would imagine that he was probably thrilled because how the big fight started at practice yesterday on Tuesday when I was there, a pass got broken up in the end zone. Malik Neighbors went up for a pass, got broken up. He's walking back to the huddle, and like a third or fourth year defensive back of the Lions who was in on the play is just standing there, and Neighbors just takes his paw and just swats him right in the face. And this Lions team is like a beehive, man. Everyone is pissed off all the time. Everyone is salty. I think that's their slogan this year, right? Salty. And this brawl just ensued. Like, everyone just starts like whacking each other. I mean, Neighbors was wearing a Guardian cap, so he doesn't have much to lose there. But he got a 1-2 combination to the head, which I'm sure still probably hurt with a helmet on, And so, yeah, this is good. This is what they wanted, right? I mean, this is, and this sort of a side story to that. Yesterday, nobody even noticed that Brian Burns got hurt. He limped off the field. And guess what he did? He taped his foot up and he went back in and started doing full contact pass rushing drills. And okay, like, you got to callous yourself a little bit here,
I love it. You're preaching to the choir here, man.
I was going to say, I think I have an audience.
This is what it's all about. And plus we got Deontay Wilder's mitt behind us. So it's a great day to talk about, punching opponents on a football field. But I wasn't there last year for training camp, but speaking to some guys and gals that cover the Giants day in and day out, they were kind of explaining to me how things were were not as intense then. OTAs to minicamp that maybe Brian Dable and the coaching staff kind of took their foot off the gas. I mean, you were out there, I imagine, for some of those training camp practices, but it sounds like those joint sessions with the Lions last summer went a little differently. Like the Lions kind of just beat the piss out of the Giants.
Yeah.
I mean, they took it to them. And how did the season start? Well, the Lions, they came out fast, strong, took the NFL by storm, were within a play or two from the Super Bowl. The Giants season was dead on arrival. I mean, that rainy game against the Cowboys, yeah, they go right down the field and then they get a penalty, they get a sack, they turn the ball over, and everybody gets injured, it seems, and their season's over before it begins. So it's got to be by design, right, with what the Giants are doing here.
Yeah, and so you can approach it both ways, right? Like I think Brian Dable was probably falling into that familiar trap of you're a new coach and you've been observing practice for 23 years, right, as a non-head coach, right, where your job is not to collect the vibes of the team. And so when you're taking over that role, you're probably constantly thinking, okay, well, when I'm a head coach, I'm going to do this differently. You're thinking in terms of like efficiency. But Dan Campbell was just different. And I think that's why he was successful in that, like, he came in being like, yeah, I'm just going to do it this way and I don't really care what anybody else thinks. And I'm not saying Dable does, but Dan Campbell came in day one being like, we have to beat the crap out of each other. This is the only way it's going to work. Bold strategy. I don't think a lot of coaches could pull that off, right? Without the respect of being a former player, without the intimidation factor of being 6'8" and 260 pounds of complete muscle. You have to be the right kind of guy. But I think Dable I think it's refreshing in that, like, he's coming around to it, right? He wanted to get a lot done for the quarterback last year, which is why the practices were quicker. They were more streamlined. But now I think he's realizing, like, okay, now we need to be tough. And a lot of teams are doing that now. It's very, very not secretly. A lot of people are following Dan Campbell's lead and ripping that guy off.
Isn't it great? I mean, I feel like there's just a course correction with the sport.
Always is. There always is, right?
Yeah, I mean, all for the high tech coaches and innovators, and you've got to out scheme the opposition. I mean, that's why McVay and Shanahan and LaFleur are a gold standard in that regard. But still, I mean, as long as there's blocking, as long as they're tackling, as long as those flags aren't in the belts. It's won with physicality. It's won with fourth quarter, 2 minutes left, third down. Like, you're on E. Can you make that play in that moment? Like, there's no way you can tell that you've got to condition all 11 players for that moment still in this sport. It's not baseball. It's not necessarily one with numbers matter. Scheme matters. It does without question, but the reason the Lions were in that NFC Championship game so close to the Super Bowl, it's everything we're talking about here.
I mean, look at the AFC Championship game. Baltimore pushed people around all year. That's why they were winning games. And then the Chiefs had this idea of, like, what if we go in there and kind of abandon who we were and from minute one start pushing guys after the whistle, start getting in everybody's face, start tackling a little bit harder than we used to, and Baltimore backed down. I mean, you can't convince me that game was anything other than one guy walking up to another guy and hitting him harder in the nose. And that's what it comes down to sometimes. You know what I memean?
Yeah. I'm just thinking of Mike Mularkey, right? The great Mike Mularkey. But like, I did like how he put it when we were chatting on all things tight ends. He's like, you know what? I want my tight ends playing through the echo of the whistle, right? The echo of the whistle, just a little extra shove. Put the ref in that position. Do you really want to throw a flag? That's what we're seeing. So let's bring it to the NFC East because that's what we're here to talk about. I like the Giants. I think that they've got something potentially special brewing there. And it all does boil down to the quarterback like it does with every team. But I don't know. I definitely will kind of expound and get into this a little bit more with a story here in a week or two. But are you with me here on the Giants? Because I think that this is a team that could potentially shock fans this season.
I totally agree. I mean, for me, a lot of people are seeing this as like the last time I think I checked the Vegas win totals, it was like 6 or 7. I would certainly bet the over on that. I think that this is a 9-win team with potential upside. Daniel Jones has looked good in spots, but it's all going to come down to the offensive line generally. But I don't see any reason why this team can't come out and be, tough, nasty, scrape out some wins like they did 2 years ago. And I think that they're going to prove a lot of people wrong. I think that they're not going to miss the running back. And I'm not saying that Saquon Barkley's bad. I think that they have a good group of people who can platoon in that position and do well. I think Neighbors is a beast. I think they're going to do a lot of interesting things with the tight end position. They have like 3 or 4 really tough dudes that are going to play there and are going to switch spots and be versatile there. The defense is going to be a little bit more predictable, right? I mean, I love Wink Martindale, but sometimes you need to not throw a haymaker every down, right? And so I think that all this is going to combine into something that, listen, Dallas is on their way down. Commanders have a rookie quarterback. It's time for the Giants to get back into the thick of things.
Totally agree on all accounts. And it's just funny how if you just were to flip the 2022 and 2023 seasons for the Giants, and, the first year is when they had all the injuries and they're winning games with Tommy DeVito, it would almost have been celebrated in a way. Like, look at the grit and the grime the Giants are playing with in December. And if the second year is when they get to the playoffs and they win a playoff game and Daniel Jones looks good and you give him that contract, I mean, the whole conversation around the team would be completely different nationally. So I get it. We've seen a lot of Daniel Jones. Like, there is a very hearty debate to have when it comes to the quarterback 6 years into this thing. But I think if you really do break it down year to year to year, no quarterback in the NFL has had a worse set of circumstances hell, you've got Joe Judge, Jason Garrett wanting to play this ball control, don't turn it over, right on the heels of a rookie season when you are pushing it downfield, you are taking some risk. It's what's getting people excited. So then you're dealing with that. And then you're dealing with year one where you had the best season of your career with Dable, who is, for my money, the best teacher of the position in the sport. And you're getting to the playoffs with, Isaiah Hodgins off the street as your number one. And then you have all the injuries they had last year. So I know it sounds like I'm making a lot of excuses, but you could quickly talk yourself into Daniel Jones taking a monster leap this season, especially with what we're seeing out there on the practice field. Malik Neighbors looks like he could be a star. They fixed the interior of that offensive line. I'm with you on the running back position. I don't think you lose a hell of a lot. Saquon to Devin Singletary and the gang. They actually do have weapons. Jalen Hyatt, Theo Johnson, Isaiah McKenzie. Of course, we got to lump him in. Our old pal Isaiah, but he could take a step. And maybe we play this back a year from now and we both look like fools. But I will not be surprised one bit if Daniel Jones has this Alex Smith, dare I say, Rich Gannon-like run late in his career.
So here's what I think. I think that I agree with you. I think my only concern for Daniel Jones is that so much of his success leading up to this point and what earned him the contract was in part due to his willingness to run the ball. And I don't know if he's healthy enough to be able to do that for the long term, like just body wise. Like, I don't know if he can take the kind of hits and the volume of hits. Like, we know he can't, right? He couldn't last year. And so if you're Brian Daboll, who, listen, this guy can call an offense in any circumstance, but has had his best years with Josh Allen. And why is Josh Allen so good? Because everyone worries that he's going to leave the pocket, right? And so there's always that built-in hesitancy with the defense. You try to build that kind of on a Walmart scale with Daniel Jones, but the problem is Daniel's got to leave the pocket and he's got to run people over. And so my concern is, can you build something around him that doesn't involve him being in the running game at all or very minimal, and because I think if you depend on him taking whatever it is, 50, 60, 70 carries over the course of the season, I think you're going to end up with Drew Lock. It's just, Daniel Jones has gotten hurt a lot. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the punishment that he takes.
I do like the psychological games at play, and maybe I'm reading into it a little too much, but he is pissed. I mean, we sat down and chatted about Hard Knocks. He did not enjoy, his words, did not enjoy what he saw. The fact that Joe Schoen and Brian Dable were very interested in these prospects. And I thought it was interesting watching it live. I don't know if you had the same thought, but they showed Joe Schoen, the general manager, speaking to Chris Mara about the conversation that Schoen had with Daniel Jones. They didn't air the Daniel Jones conversation. So I'm like, yeah, that was kind of left on the cutting room floor there, Daniel. What wasn't? He kind of chuckled. Like, to be a fly on the wall or to have a camera in the room for that, like, not a fan. But I think that the Giants, to an extent, probably know this about him, and they know how he's wired. They know when they came in, they didn't pick up that fifth-year option, nor should they, with what they had seen out of the quarterback to that point through 4 years, and they got a career year out of Daniel Jones without much around him. So, you know, with a little bit of that editorial control that they have over what's on Hard Knocks, the Giants, I'm sure they kind of like the fact that Jones is maybe a little ticked off. And he knows their intent, and they know that he knows that the world saw this all. So prove it right, prove us right, prove us wrong. However you want to look at their contract. Right now, it's a 1-year deal, and it's on Daniel Jones to earn that 4-year deal in its entirety.
I think that most players play their best when they feel supported and loved. However, in this one circumstance, I think it's a massive advantage because the Giants already paid Daniel Jones, so there's no griping there. And Daniel Jones knows that this is the end of the road. Probably, very likely. And it was funny. I mean, I wrote 100 bold predictions this offseason, and one of them is that Drew Lock was going to start a majority of the games. I kind of got on a little bit of a Drew Lock kick this offseason. I like Drew Lock. I'm kind of a Drew Lock guy. And it was funny. After I wrote it, a coach who was not with the Giants, but was friendly with coaches from the Giants, said, you realize that, like, Daniel's a man on fire this offseason, right? Like, this guy is coming in, he's ripping it up. He might have had his best spring ever. And I was like, okay, good. I mean, mission accomplished if you're the Giants, right? Like, okay, we got him. He's dialed in. And I don't think any of this was, necessary. Like you said, it's not Daniel's fault. It wasn't for a lack of effort. It's not like he's not trying out there. But you have him now in a really good position, and you have him in a mental place where he's ready to tear some people apart.
You just nailed it, too. And I think this is also why Brian Dable is one of the best coaches in football. I mean, he gets on guys' asses. Like, we see it. We saw it here in Buffalo with Josh Allen, the New England game, 2019, on the sideline, just reaming him out. Yeah. And you saw it with Tyrod Taylor back in the same stadium when you've got one play at the 1-yard line to get some points, and he checked it to a run. It's stuffed. There they go off the field, and it's like, outside looking in, you see that, like, whoa, he's being too hard on these players. Like, what's he doing here? And he did the Daniel Jones right at the Titans game, first year they're together. But you ask any of these players, and they love him. I mean, there is that real love there, that real relationship there where he can do that because he knows, and the players know, what the foundation of the relationship is. So I think that Daniel Jones gets that too, that this is a coaching staff that wants to get the most out of him. And at the end of the day, they didn't draft the quarterback, right? They got you Malik Neighbors after they got you Jalen Hyatt, after they got you Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Johnson, and Darius Slayton's still in there. So he's got a hell of a team around him. So as ornery as he might be out of that, I think that Daniel Jones gets that. He was quick to say, like, 100%, yes, very happy with where things are going.
Yeah. And, I don't know. I think it can work. But Daniel Jones is interesting. It's like Baker Mayfield maybe like 2 years ago, where like half the league is like, I would love to work with that guy. And half the league is just like, nope, I'm good. I'll take a hard pass. I mean, I know coaches now that are just like, give me Daniel Jones, please. Please let that team get rid of him. He's a tough kid. I'll take him. I'll make it work, And so we'll see, I don't know. I want him to rip it up. I mean, who doesn't, Who doesn't want the Giants and the Jets, New York football to be good? It's just good. It's a good thing,
Well, we are a very pro Aaron Rodgers podcast. That has definitely been established here. Oh, well, we'll definitely have to have you back on to talk all things Hackett and Rodgers and Jets and Saleh. But sticking in the division then, actually, before we move to the Cowboys, what would concern you about the Giants then, seeing them as much as you have this training camp?
Interior offensive line, right? And the not having stability at the right tackle position, not knowing when Evan Neal's going to come off PUP, if he's going to come off PUP. John Michael Schmitz has been hurt each of the last 2 years, and you can't, if center is such a high volume hit draft pick, right? Like most of those guys end up playing for 10 years, and that's why a lot of GMs, when they're in trouble, and I'm not saying that that's why they took them, but a lot of GMs, when you're in trouble, you pick, first round center because it's like, okay, good, I got a 10-year starter out of that. That's a hit, Well, very few guys. I mean, the guy that the Bengals took, Price, a couple of years ago, was really the only one that ended up kind of being a little bit of a disaster, right? And I think he played for the Giants actually for a couple of weeks. But yeah, interior offensive line, that's the concern, right? Interior offensive line in the right tackle position. Like, can you shore that up? And I guess you fortify that with all the tight ends that you're going to keep on the roster. And you can do some stuff with, helping them out in the blocking scheme. But yeah, if you can get that to work, I think you're going to make this work, Tyler. I don't know. I think 9 wins is not out of the conversation.
Completely agree. I mean, right tackle is fascinating because, man, I do think that this completely remade front office has done a really bang-up job getting rid of a lot of dead weight and bringing in a lot of talent. But if you draft a tackle at the top 10, he cannot be a disaster player. I mean, you need Evan Neal to at least be average, competent, not terrified of what's going to happen play to play when he's out there. He's hurt right now. At least they covered their bases this offseason with Illuminor. I mean, he can play guard, but now he's out there at right tackle. It seems like he's just going to stay there. How does he look to you? Because I'm thinking of, I mean, you can just cherry pick any one-on-one rep, any play in training camp practice. So it's hard to say, but there was that one move that Brian Burns put on him, a spin that was just filthy at a practice last week. And then in those joint practices, it looked like he held up pretty well against Aiden Hutchinson in one-on-ones. But we've also seen him in games a bunch too. You kind of know what you have. Can he hold it down there? Because you know what you're getting on the other side in Andrew Thomas.
Right. And I just think, like, again, I think no matter what, although it was surprising how many times, I mean, going back and I watched a bunch of Evan Neal this offseason for something that I was doing.
What a great way to spend the offseason. Just pop on that Evan Neal tape.
Really makes you think, at the end of our days when we get that big pie chart of how we allotted our time, that little slice of Evan Neal film that one day is probably one that I'm going to look back on and regret. But I was surprised at how often he was left without help. And I do think that's going to change. Like, I really do. I think, Brian Dable's excited about the tight ends, and I really do think that's going to factor into it. So, regardless of how good or bad it is, I think that there's a plan to at least fix it in some way, shape, or form. Like, I don't know. Neal was kind of like, remember the Buccaneers Chiefs Super Bowl when everyone was like, at what point is Andy Reid going to get the right side of the offensive line help? And they just kept pounding it. That felt like Evan Neal a lot last season. Now I think the thought process of the tight end position, the running backs, guys who can block a little bit too, I think it's all kind of making sense to me and coming together.
And again, it is the quarterback who just has to kind of like rise all tides where, I mean, I was just talking to a coach with the Packers and he brings up a play with Jordan Love in that wild card game against the Cowboys. I don't think I appreciated it in real time like I should have, but it's 14-0. They're driving at the 20. Jerry's World finally wakes up, right? The fans are going nuts. Third down, and he kind of does an Aaron Rodgers. He hard count, gets the Cowboys to declare that they're bringing two blitzers up the middle, maxes up the protection, brings people in, and knows he's got Dontavian Wicks on a post route in breaker on Stephon Gilmore with no safety help, cover zero, and has the intelligence to get them to declare and then bring in more protection and bring in Jaden Reed on a motion as the play clock is literally at 4, 3, 2. He snaps it right before it goes off, has pressure in his face, delivers the ball to Wicks for a touchdown, it's game over right then. Like, Daniel Jones is going to have moments like that if the Giants are going to deliver.
And that's ultimately the difference, right? And we could say that about Jared Goff this season, and, that's going to matter for the Lions. We could say it about Aaron Rodgers in his 40s. It's true. It's true of anybody, and you're right. But Daniel, I think he's capable. I really do. And I think we can see it sometimes through the nicest ball that I've seen all spring. I mean, I've only seen 5 teams, but that was the nicest ball that I've seen.
Only 5 teams.
Yeah. I mean, it's a couple quarterbacks, right? I'm going to see Jaden Daniels tomorrow, though. I'm excited. That's my guy.
How's the travel? I mean, are you driving to all these places? Have you been flying?
A little bit of flying, but mostly this year I got really smart with the joint practices. So you hit the Giants first, and then you hit the Jets first, and then the Giants have the Lions. So you go back to Giants because I live 15 minutes from the facility. You go back there and you hit them for the Lions. Then on Thursday, we're going to go back to Jets to hit the Commanders and not worry about the Jets because you're already over at the Commanders side. And so it's good. You just kind of got to piecemeal it out and utilize the tools at your disposal. Albert Breer's been on the road for 16, 17 days now. So, I'm not quite there, but I also can't sleep in hotels. So, I don't like it,
That's the thing. And I was trying to tell my wife this. It's like, you think you're in the hotel, you got a nice cozy bed.
Oh yeah. They're picturing us with a bathrobe on and we're ordering champagne from room service. I was like, no, man, it is a dark, scary Fairfield Inn on the side of the highway. It's mostly truckers. You have to scream into the back of the office to get somebody to come out to check you in when you get there at 12:15 a.m. And then you're laying down on a mattress that you don't know who's been there before you. This isn't this isn't the real Housewives or anything like that. We're not just, we're not floating around having tartar here. We're this is a grind.
Something strange about the quiet too, that it's eerie. Like, I find myself just putting the TV on to have noise, right? Because we're so used to kids and chaos and all of that. Also, I did not mention this to my animal loving wife, but on the drive back so I drove to Jersey and drove back. And so this would have been around, 11 p.m., close to home, going through Eagle, Bliss, tiny little, not even towns, incorporated townships here in Western New York. And there's a squirrel, or not even a squirrel, it was a raccoon. And I couldn't swerve. There was a car behind me. I knew I was going to hit it. And I'm a murderer, Conor. I killed a raccoon. And you think I don't even know the last time I hit a raccoon. I mean, it's just a tiny little bump. It's just ta-ta. And he's gone. And I felt really bad about it. So, all right.
You never know. He might have been a bad person. He might have been a bad raccoon.
Could have been the Hitler of raccoons. Maybe I did everybody a service. That's true. All right. That's my story. I'm going to stick to it. There's no segue, but I mean, from one tragic incident to the next, let's go to the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, this is a team. The talent's there, as it usually is. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons. They probably will make the playoffs, but they probably will be held back. We kind of talked about them ad nauseum here. Man, you could have gotten Dak Prescott done early and sat down with him and said, hey, let's get your number down for 2024. Let's get you another weapon. Let's get you a lineman. Let's get some help on defense. Let's figure out how to win now. Instead, Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones and poor Mike McCarthy caught in the middle of it all are just in no man's land. So I'm with you. I think this is a team that takes a step back. Where do you think they take a step back, Conor?
I mean, I'm just looking at this. I'm looking at this team, and your best players that aren't CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, and Micah Parsons are Tank Lawrence, who's great. He's 32. He was drafted in 2014. Zach Martin, great. He's 33, drafted in 2014. Your other key positions, Ezekiel Elliott, he's great. He's a running back. He's 30. He's drafted in, or 29, excuse me, drafted in 2016. I mean, it's 2024. You know what I mean? And you're going to have Tyler Guyton at left tackle, likely. And I think he's going to be really good. But I think left tackles need time to develop. And it's going to be a really hard season for him. And so I don't know. Like, it's sort of like, it's exactly how Jerry Jones would build a football team now, right? You got like 3 stars to put on the billboard to get everybody in. And then once you get in, it's like Disney World, right? They trapped you in there. They already have your money. And now you're like, oh boy, this is terrible, right? The lines are long. The food's expensive. It's really hot. I actually want to leave. And it's like, well, who cares? I already have your money, so you might as well stay, right? That's how they're getting these people in here. It's like, oh, we got CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons and Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Look at that. But once you get in there, it's like, oh boy. The rest of your players are like 34 and not really that good. And, I don't know. What's the infrastructure of this team? Like, sell me on the foundation of this team. I don't see it.
Boy, they've got their talking points down. I mean, both Jerry and Steven from their day one press conference on, I think Steven used this analogy on the radio once. They talk about hovering near the rim. Right. Jerry even used his hand like this. We're hovering near the rim and we're right there. And so, all right, if you want to use that analogy, you had every opportunity to tomahawk jam it, to dunk
it. Yeah.
And you did nothing. You don't have the foresight to get your best players locked up like Philadelphia does. I mean, they were ahead of the curve with Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. And now you're going to, if you are interested in keeping Dak Prescott, you're paying north of $60 million a year. CeeDee Lamb, as he should, wants more money than any non-quarterback in football. And there's Micah Parsons as well. So it's insane, but they don't like dead money. I mean, what I was told is Stephen Jones, it's him and Jerry are very different in this regard. He doesn't want to get caught up into paying people not to work. Just the fear of that, even though you're the richest sports franchise in the world, which is insane. So here's what Jerry said, and I'm just going to read this quote. So bear with me, Conor, and I want you to make sense of it because I just don't know what the hell he's talking about. Quote, I'm all in. I'm all in. Sometimes being all in means you narrow. And he held his hands close together. You remove the months out here that are in the future, and you narrow it down into all we're talking about is right now and the next playoff season. And that's it for everybody. We're all in. We're all in. It's all right there. Okay. We've all got some things out here in the future. Another 2 or 3 years on contracts, all that stuff. Let's all get in here. 0 right now in this. Dak's got his year, his contract. Let's focus right here. We've all got a lot on the line for that playoff game. A lot on it. Took a little break. I know that I have had a lot of mistakes in these years, but the same guy's making this decision that has the Cowboys and really got here by the skin of my teeth. Okay, I'm going to stop myself short because it goes on and on. He doesn't make any sense. He's just rambling. It's just a word salad. I mean, he really was one we beat Medicare away from probably needing to step down. Sorry. We don't need to get into politics, but it was rough. It was really cringy to watch, and I honestly felt bad for Mike McCarthy, like really bad. I can see why he would be fed up. And even when you know how Jerry Jones is, even when you know what you're walking into, there's going to be part of you that thinks, I can make this work. We can make this work. And he has won 12 games, 3 seasons in a row. He's kind of proven people like me wrong, that he can keep up X's and O's wise. I mean, his offense, his pass, they scored more points than anybody per game last year. So there's a lot of good. But his ownership is going to hold this team back. Again, they're doing it right now.
You cannot. And we said kind of the opposite about Daniel Jones. So I want to make sure that I'm clarifying myself here. Daniel Jones is in a situation where he's up against a wall and he feels that pressure. However, he's already been paid. You cannot run a franchise where the head coach is on a 1-year deal. A lot of the assistants, I've been told, are on unorthodox 1-year deals, right? A lot of the people in that building are on 1-year deals, right? You are not paying the quarterback. You're not paying the wide receiver. You're not paying the pass rusher. Dak Prescott, I would feel, I don't know this, but is probably resigned to the fact now that if he hits the open market at this point, he doesn't have to deal with them anymore. Hell, the Giants might need a quarterback next year. And, one agent told me this. They're like, Dak Prescott could make probably close to $70 million a season. Because it's like Deshaun Watson, right? Like the market is going to shoot up because a quarterback like that doesn't become available, right? And so You look at all these teams that are going to be crazy desperate. The Raiders are going to need a quarterback. Who knows? The Colts might need a quarterback if this Anthony Richardson thing doesn't work out, right? The Cardinals might need a quarterback. All these teams that we're not really thinking about right now, they are going to be desperate and need a quarterback, are going to go after Dak Prescott and pay him a boatload of money. So he already knows that, right? All I got to do is hold here at this point. And if I'm him, I'm not negotiating with them anymore. Because why would you? And everybody else in that building is not feeling any love, is not feeling any security, is not feeling any sort of semblance of like, this guy has my back. And that's not a way to go into a season. It's not healthy. It's unhealthy.
Beautifully said. I'm thinking back to the year we covered the Syracuse basketball team. What was their slogan that year? Shut it down. The Dax people should be telling Jerry, we're shutting shit down. Negotiations are over. You wasted your opportunity. Because that's the thing. They can't even hold the risk of injury over his head. He broke his damn leg in a contract year. He's been there, and he got paid. Yeah. Like, somebody will pay Dak Prescott a lot of money. And you're right. Maybe it isn't 60. Maybe it is 70. So good on him. He's going to bet on himself, as he should. I'd be shocked at this point if he negotiates, let alone signs a contract. And this is like purely by coincidence. I promise you. But this book right here, I cannot recommend it enough. Simon Sinek, The Infinite Game. He is amazing. Everything you just talked about is like in his book on how you should run a business and how you empower your employees and get them to a place where they're happy every morning to go to work and want to pour their heart and soul into it. And basically the Cowboys would be an example of everything not to do in this book.
100%.
If you want your employees, whether they're coaches or players, to give you less than their best, you do what Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones are doing. You make them all lame ducks. You piss them off. And yeah, I get it. We're all big boys and they should go out. They're going to try their best. It's not like Dak Prescott's going to blow the season, but it's a human game once again, and they just don't get it. And it's no coincidence that the two teams in the NFC who have failed to reach the conference championship game are the Washington Redskins football team, Commanders, and the Dallas Cowboys. Ownership.
Dude, look, I just pulled it up, right? A list of every team in the NFL. You don't think the Titans would pay Dak Prescott next year? You don't think the Colts, if Anthony Richardson doesn't work out, wouldn't pay him next year? You don't think that the Steelers could clear the deck with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and just pay Dak Prescott next year? You don't think the Browns could? If Deshaun Watson ends up flopping again and they're still desperate and they need to get this thing over the hump, the Raiders, the Broncos. All right, that's just in the AFC. The Giants next year, the Cardinals. Who else have we got? The Seahawks, the Panthers, Saints, Buccaneers. You don't think any of those teams would pay Dak Prescott $65 million a year?
He will have a robust market.
Telling you. I don't know. I think it's a disaster. I wrote this earlier in the year. Parsons, Prescott, and Lamb should all hold out together. It's the only way. It's the only way to get this guy back into gear and have him start operating like an owner that cares. I forgot Dak's right over there. Look at that.
Just took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, there he is. You are the writer who knows as much about Dak Prescott as anybody. What was that story behind you at Sports Illustrated?
Oddly enough, it was we were reporting on him signing his first long-term contract. And so that story is actually about the Cowboys' like very weird and sordid history of trying to lowball players because they should be happy to play for the Cowboys. And it's funny how like talked to guys from the 70s about this and the 80s and the 90s. And like even the guys from the 70s were like, yeah, Jerry or whatever. It was Tom Landry and Gil Brandt, right? And all those guys back then. And Tex Schramm, yeah, God, Gil Brandt is a legend, right? And it's like, yeah, okay, they'd offer me $30,000 a year, and which was well below market value for a running back. But then they'd say, here's a gift card to, Johnny Hall's Steakhouse, and you can eat whatever you want there, and and then we'll get you a pickup truck and whatever else. The one guy said like, oh, he's a I think he's like a millionaire in the software business because the Cowboys got him a off-season job as a software engineer in like the 70s. And so I don't know, whatever. I mean, but there's also when they had a draft pick, I think in the 70s, who didn't sign. And back then they had a weekly Cowboys TV show where it was, it was like the coach and it was like the owner, and they gave out the player's home address who did not sign his rookie deal, which, like, wow. Can you imagine?
Oh my God,
doing that now? That's like an effort to like pressure him into signing a contract. So the franchise has softened a little bit since then, but
it is interesting how much the league has changed too. I don't know how much being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, like the aura that comes with it. It is an aura. Roger Staubach to Troy Aikman to Ryan Leaf to Quincy Carter. And
Troy Aikman's in the Hall of Fame, and he has, like, Ryan Fitzpatrick is, like, statistically just as good of a quarterback as he is. Like,
don't tell Troy Aikman that, because
I love Troy. I love Troy.
Oh man! Actually, a buddy in town here, Joe DiBiase at WGR 55, he had the tweet pointing that out that you just brought up, that Ryan Fitzpatrick's stats are better than Troy Aikman, and Aikman, like, quote tweeted him, went after him, was pissed off about it. So it's a sore spot with Troy, clearly. But I don't know, being the Dallas Cowboys, how much can they use that in their negotiation? I don't know if Dak really is going to care at this point. Kind of been there, done that. Fresh start might be refreshing in a lot of ways.
I'm just looking this up. From 1997 to 2000, Troy Aikman averaged a 58% completion rate. He was 24 and 28, 55 TDs to 43 ends. Anyway, we can get way down that rabbit hole.
All right, real quick, let's get your takes on both the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. I mean, we're kind of burying the team that probably favored to win this division.
Right.
But what do you like about the Eagles? What concerns you about the Eagles? And same thing with those rebuilding Commanders.
I love what the Eagles did this offseason. I know ESPN, Tim McManus has an interesting piece today on the deterioration of Hurts and Sirianni's relationship. I think that, I don't know about Hurts. Hurts is the one guy I'm not sure of. And I did a quarterback carousel piece earlier this year, and I put Hurts on there, right, as a guy who may be available at some point. And everyone's like, how could you do that? You're crazy. And I'm like, am I? Because they got rid of Carson Wentz before it was time. They got rid of Donovan McNabb before it was time. They're going to keep doing that because that's how they work. That's what they believe, And if Jalen Hurts has another bad season, we could start to see the machinations in place where he goes. I think Shane Steichen did a really good job with him. And I need to see Jalen do it again without maybe what was the best play calling job of the season that year. But Kellen Moore's good. He's adaptable. He's able to call an offense, speak the quarterback language. So we'll see. And I think bringing in a really vested Vic Fangio, getting him out of Miami, putting him into a spot where he can be close to his beautiful hometown of the greater Scranton area in Pennsylvania. It's all good. I think there's good vibes there. I really do. I mean, I think this team is a 10-win team. I don't think there's any question about it.
I love an original take too, Conor. That's why we have you on here. Also, everybody go read Conor Orr's 100, right? Or did you go north of 100? 100 predictions?
We did 100, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Always love it. It's equal parts insightful and entertaining. But I didn't really thought about that with Jalen Hurts. I think the Eagles probably do view their franchise, from Jeffrey Lurie to Howie Roseman, top down, just who they are as a franchise, as like a quarterback factory. We make the quarterbacks, not the other way around. They've gone through head coaches, they've gone through quarterbacks. They did pay Hurts a lot of money, but now that number is only going to keep getting higher and higher and higher. There could be a little sneaky pressure on Hurts this year. Good point. All right, how about the Commanders? I think we're all excited about Jaden Daniels, but probably a year or two away, or hey, maybe this is a CJ Stroud Texans situation. I don't know.
They did put him in a really good spot, right? Where you have like guys like Austin Eckler and Terry McLaurin, and everyone's talking about how good of the personnel that Caleb Williams has in Chicago, but I would say that Jaden is probably right there in terms of the talent that he has if Jahan Dotson comes around, right? And that offensive line's still pretty good. So I think that the expectations are there. They should be. I mean, to me, the most pressure is on Cliff Kingsbury, where you have to really reinvent yourself as a play caller. But I think Dan Quinn's always going to be a slam dunk of a head coaching candidate. I loved him when he was in Atlanta. I just think the time came where it made sense for them to move on. But yeah, I mean, I think everything's good. I'm jacked. I mean, I'm going to see him tomorrow. Dan Quinn back in Morris County, New Jersey, where he was born and raised. So that'll be kind of fun to catch up with him. And, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they could be anywhere from, I mean, Jaden could struggle and they could win 6 games, or, the Commanders could win 8 or 9 games,
I forget the last time you joined our show here was for a Jaden Daniels conversation. You are the Jaden Daniels expert. I mean, how do you like that union with Cliff Kingsbury and what they want to do offensively? I mean, Anthony Lynn is there too. He can get creative with the ground game. We've seen it here in Buffalo. You've got some potential there. I know there's a lot of different ways to look at that coaching staff, but I mean, Kingsbury did do a lot of good, through September and October and some of November, and then the wheels came off for a couple seasons.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, anyone you talk to is like, that team started out as a true air raid team and then very quickly became the Rams, because you realize that you can't really go full air raid in the NFL. You just can't, and everyone's saying, oh, Andy Reid ran air raid. Andy Reid also had Patrick Mahomes. And so it's a little bit different, right? Andy Reid ran some air raid concepts, but, it's not the same thing, right? So, I think it's probably more of a Rams-inspired offense that he is working with right now, and we'll see. I mean, Jaden's incredibly decisive, high completion percentage guy. I think as long as he can stay healthy and avoid big hits, I think he's in for a really good rookie season.
And it looks like Dan Quinn kind of brought in some veterans to steward, his defense and everything he wants in there. Yeah.
Bobby Wagner. Yeah.
Easy to make fun of some of these signings, but like in these rebuilds, it's so underrated. I think it is smart, like to bring in some vets who have been there, done that, and it's not just a total slamming the reset button of 21 and 22-year-olds. You need like a Bobby Wagner out there to, show people how to work and run a defense.
I love aging stars. It's my favorite thing in the world, aging stars. And one of my best days, I promise I'll shut up after this. One of my best days being a journalist was I was covering the Yankees, and they were in a playoff push. And so I think like that week they signed like Kerry Wood from the old Cubs, Lance Berkman, like a 40-year-old Lance Berkman. And I'm just in the clubhouse like, yeah, baby, like championship. Oh. Like I was so fired up. Like I love just like stars from my youth, like hanging on. It's such a cool thing, It's
Give
the best.
Hakeem Olajuwon as a Toronto Raptor on the block, posting up.
Yes.
Patrick Ewing of the Orlando Magic. It's glorious.
100%.
It's what sports is all about. I want a 41-year-old Patrick Ewing out there, creaky kneed, barely able to get up and down the court, hanging on for dear life. We need more of that. So I don't care how Bobby Wagner looks out there, but he'll be in a new uniform, and that's what matters.
100%.
Conor, this was a delight. You are a delight, and thank you so much for hanging out with us, man. This is one of the absolute best writers in the business. Everybody, go follow Conor on Twitter. Read his stuff at si.com. You will not be disappointed. Can't wait to see you on the road again, buddy.
You too, brother. We'll talk soon, all right?
Well, and now I'm mad. I don't like being called buddy, and I just called you buddy. What a terrible way to end a podcast there.
That's
I feel
all
like
right.
we got to record the whole thing again. Like
all right,
the friendship will never be the same.
Let's go. Woo!
The friendship will never be the same. All right, thanks a lot, Conor.
All right, see you, man.